Welcome to the Rocky Garza Show. Today we are talking about the Achieving More Than Success system. We're going to dive into each of those components. Where did it come from? Why did we build it? And how do we even begin to use it to really discover how do we build a life that we actually want? But before we dive in, I just want to remind you, as always, if you are interested in learning about our next virtual event that we have, go to rockygarza.com/achieving more. Again, that's rockygarza.com/achieving more. And there you'll always be able to keep up with our next and latest and greatest event that we have coming up that you can join, that you can attend. So make sure, check out that link, grab your spot, and we want to make sure that you always know where that is. All right, let's jump in here together. The Achieving More Than Success system. Over the course of the last decade, through speaking, through coaching individuals inside of businesses, as well as coaching teams, and ultimately really consulting organizations from people development and a leadership perspective. There's this reoccurring theme that I have found, and it doesn't matter if it's a manager who's sort of stepping in to their role for the first time, or we're talking, CEOs of $100 million organizations that we've worked with. There's this common theme that I feel like I've seen and found over and over and over the last decade. And that's this idea that we attain some level of perceived success that we believe we're supposed to have. And for some folks, that's that we've made a certain salary. We've finally gotten a certain level of benefits. We've finally got ourselves into where we've made a certain level of money and income. And we're looking at each of these pieces and these parts. We have folks that they've got just the right car. They finally got, they're flying private, or they've finally gotten the plane that they've always wanted. And we can kind of stack up each of these sort of individual metrics of success, if you will, that different folks have had. But the reoccurring theme that we seem to be finding over the last decade is that even with all of these sort of external components of success, every person has one thing in common. And that's that at some point in their life, in their career, they're asking the question, what now? I've gotten this thing, now what? I've gotten this thing, what now? I finally attained it, I did it, I got it, I'm where today that I dreamed of being 3 years ago, and what now? And so over and over and over again, I consistently find folks that they come in and they work with us and they're asking this question, what now? And even though whatever they're doing to measure their degree of success, they're all different, they still have this common thread of saying there has to be something more. I feel like I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. I've done everything that I need to do. I've done everything everyone told me to do. Now what? And so from that, we've sort of gathered all of that information, gathered all of that data together and said, how do we create a system that allows us to be able to reflect back on some of those accomplishments and achievements and go, well done, I love it, that's amazing, I like it, that's me, and surely there's something else in this life. Surely there's something more out there for me to have or for me to do. And really it boils down to going, what is it that you want? And most of the time, the response I get back is, I don't know. I've done all the things I think I'm supposed to do, but it's not giving me the level of fulfillment. And really something we're going to talk about a ton here on the podcast is it's not giving me the level of peace that I thought that it would. See, I think oftentimes we get this preconceived notion that accomplishing our goals, accomplishing our dreams, is that's going to be the thing that brings us peace. When I can finally get that thing done, then I'll have peace. When I finally get that thing paid off, I'll have peace. When my account has one more zero, but on the good side, I will have peace. When I get a promotion, I'll have peace. When I get to be a leader, I'll have peace. And when I attain this thing, then I will be able to go and get peace. As though it's something out there that we only are able to attain once we've reached some degree of accomplishment. I think one thing that we have found in our Achieving More Than Success system is that peace is something that can be found today. Now, is it simple to find it today? Not always. Does it mean it doesn't require work? Usually. No, that's not the case. It usually requires work. But is there a method? Is there a process? Are there systems to be put in place that really allow us to say, where do I am able to really find peace so that I know I'm actually living and building the life that I want? And for us, that's the Achieving More Than Success system. Now, inside of this system, we have really 5 main components, right? We have 5 parts of this system. The first one, we just really affectionately, we like to call and say that it's called the shoulds. The shoulds are killing you, okay? First part of our Achieving More Than Success is really this recognition, this awareness to say, hold on a second. I got all these things, but it doesn't feel right. I got all these parts and pieces that I told I was supposed to do, and I could, and I should, and I did, and I won't, and I can't. And we got all these things, and for some reason, though, it just doesn't really feel the way that I want it to feel. And why is that? Well, we say that's because the shoulds are killing you. It's the idea that what are all the shoulds in your life that you are thinking or feeling? What are all the things you should be doing or you shouldn't be doing? And how is the language around that socially, relationally, professionally, personally, in your family? How are the conversations around what you should be doing creating an effect on the life that you are actually living? See, oftentimes I find that when I have individuals, right? I often find when I have someone who has their vocabulary, the words they are using to express things to themselves, even at times to others, when our vocabulary is flushed with shoulds of all the things we should do, we find that the shoulds are actually the components that are killing the opportunity to be present. They're killing the clarity and responsibility we have for ourselves, and the shoulds are killing the ability for us to recognize that it's the daily consistent behavior. We're going to talk about this here in a little bit, but it's really understanding and redefining the landscape even for what success looks like, that we stop chasing mountaintop to mountaintop, we stop thinking about the very next most incredible, biggest thing we're ever going to accomplish, and we realize that life in fact is meant to be lived in the now, but oftentimes what is preventing us from living in the now is that we have this enormous amount of shoulds that we believe we're supposed to be doing, even though we don't really want to be doing, or we even actually are doing in our life. And inevitably the shoulds are killing us and preventing us from achieving more than success. They're killing us from living the life that we actually want. And so I would ask you today to question even yourself, are the shoulds killing you? Are the shoulds in your life and all the things you're supposed to be doing, are they robbing you of the opportunity to build the life that you actually want? Part 1, the shoulds are killing you. Part 2, as we say, is we really have to redefine, and we really have to really unpack what we refer to as the great life myth. And the great life myth is this idea about what the proverbial perfect life is, about what a great life is. If I could just do this, and if I could have the right parts and the right pieces, if I could get in front of the right person, if I could accomplish the right goals, if I could have the right amount of money, if I could have the right amount of material, if everybody liked me, if I could get a certain amount of followers, and even those of you that are going to roll your eyes and say you don't care, but you're on social and you're putting out content, the reality is that you care. Just be honest. The best place to find clarity is if we're willing to be honest with ourselves, right? It's the ability to sort of unpack this great life myth and go, wait a second, are maybe my metrics for success, right? Are the KPIs, my personal KPIs in life, are those things actually being built on a life that I really want? Or are they being built on this idea of a great life myth? A myth is a story that is told to us that has some inherent truth, meaning that at some point, somehow we said, yeah, I think that's it. But a myth is a story that's told to us, it's not actually real, right? You think about all the myths we've heard over our life, right? We think about we could think about them as urban legends. We think about all these stories that are told. We go, is that true or not true? Can you really do that? Is that really how it happens? See, I think a lot of us have this great life myth that if we could, A, B, C, or D, then I will be satisfied. Then my life will be great. Then I will know I am moving in the right direction. So the second component of the Achieving More Than Success system is the ability to unpack the great life myth, to really determine what is the myth and therefore what is the truth. What does a good, true, full life look like? And we'll have future episodes on this where we're going to unpack each one of these steps coming up here in the near future. But the second step in the Achieving More Than Success system is unpacking the great life myth. That maybe a great life starts with our capacity to foster vulnerability. Maybe a great life myth starts with our capacity to really invest in ourselves. Maybe the great life myth and debunking that thing really starts with you looking at you in the mirror. I was recently on a podcast with Amy Somerville. She's the CEO of Success Magazine, and she asked me a question about authentic leadership. She said, "Well, how do we get to authentic leadership? It's a buzzword, right? We use it all the time. We're saying it all the time. How do we know if our leader is being authentic? How do we know if we are becoming authentic leaders?" And I just looked back at her and I responded and said, I think oftentimes being an authentic leader is a code that we use. It's a scapegoat that we have that gives me the ability to say, I am who I am, take it or leave it. And it's an excuse that we use to prevent ourselves from really reflecting on who we are and actually changing. See, authentic leadership begins with self-responsibility. Unpacking the great life myth starts with self-responsibility. And what I mean by self-responsibility is it takes us right into step number 3. Step 3 in the Achieving More Than Success system, right, is our ability to gain clarity of self through identity mapping. Identity mapping is our longest running method and process that we've had for almost a decade now. We've been utilizing the identity mapping process. Right? It's a 4-part self-assessment that we guide you through that really allows us to be able to say, hey, here's what it is and here's what it looks like and here's how we operate, but what's the language behind who we are? What's the language behind what I'm actually doing? What's the language behind how I operate best? What's the language behind why I do what I do? What's the language behind how my brain works? Do I even know what I'm thinking about regularly? And I'm not asking you to consider that question as though I think that you don't know how to think. Oftentimes I find that we are thinking in a default mode that tends to be much more reactionary than it does tend to be proactive. So we find ourselves back on our heels, playing life on defense, and we spend so much time sort of out here making sure that we keep all the bad away, as opposed to really spending time to opening ourselves up to really let the good in. See, identity mapping is a self-assessment that allows you to find the greatest clarity for who you are as an individual that you've ever had. It's the greatest clarity that you have to go, wait, how does my brain work? How do I walk forward proactively? How do I give a language for why I do things and how I do things, which, by the way, your strengths, one of the biggest misconceptions in professional development that there is, and we'll cover that here in future weeks. And then really looking at what I do. We call those identifiers. We stack that language together. We know what you do, how you do it, and why you do it. And now, step 3 in the Achieving More Than Success system, we have identity mapping. The capacity for us to have a great sense of self-clarity, which leads into self-responsibility because we become aware of who we are and how to leverage that for good in those around us, which all of a sudden allows us to be genuinely authentic, not use it as a scapegoat or a buzzword, and all of a sudden our leadership capability skyrockets. And as we're moving up in this direction in our leadership and saying, I'm really getting after it, I'm really doing it, then what? Now what? Step 4 in our Achieving More Than Success system. It's taking control of the imposter within. If you're listening to this or you're checking it out, you're watching this right now, I know for a fact if you are a human being, you have experienced imposter syndrome. I know you've had a moment in your life where there was something, some voice that said, oof, I don't know that it's you. I don't know that you're the one. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think that you can do it. I don't think that tiny little voice, and sometimes it feels like it's screaming at us, and sometimes it feels like it's whispering at us. And either way, the imposter, once we take self-clarity, we have self-responsibility, we begin to take the right steps, the thing that always gets in our way is the imposter's voice. See, we have found through the confidence method that we can really unpack and discover what the imposter's voice is. And I think what I'm learning in my experience working with folks is that maybe the imposter's voice isn't always the enemy. Maybe it's the message that the imposter is sending is the part that's ruining where we are. See, when we begin to unpack stories told to us and stories we tell ourselves, we have the capacity to realize that the collision of those two stories almost always create an impact, and that the impact of those stories has the capacity to either be damaging to who we are and cause us to have self-doubt, or the impact of that collision can actually drive truth and goodness in who we are. We're going to cover the imposter within later on down the road. But when we do, we're really going to dive into confirmation versus affirmation, how we decide and we look at this. And each of those pieces, really what we're looking at is step 4 of the Achieving More Than Success system. It's our capacity to understand the stories told to us about us. And then when we get to this place, we've realized that the shoulds are killing us. Bam, we got to get rid of those things. We unpack the great life myth and redefine a life that we really want. We gain clarity of self and what it looks like. We've unpacked the narrative and the story that's really driving towards the imposter within. We wake up, it's Tuesday, we say, I'm ready to get after it, I'm doing the work, I'm in it daily, now what? Well, together we have to redefine the landscape of success. See, if we're going to achieve more than success, then we have to redefine what success really is. You have to do the work to redefine what success really is for you. We have to recognize that life is not attempted or meant to be lived in these huge, huge peak moments. It's not attempted to be lived. Life is not really lived where we're saying, hey, let me go mountaintop to mountaintop because the life I really want is mountaintop to mountaintop, because I don't believe that's how life is intended to be lived. Don't get me wrong, I love a good mountaintop. I love the opportunity to occasionally find that one big thing that I'm going to go do, right? Get after it, climb the mountain, get to the top, check out the view, wave the flag, put it in the ground and say, we did it. But life is not lived on the mountaintop. Stay with me on this. Life is meant to be lived in the valley. And when I say valley, I'm not referring to below the surface. I'm referring to the space between mountaintops. That's the valley. See, success is in the valley. Success is not when we finally hit the revenue goal one time. Success is that I had, for me in my life, is I had the marriage and I had the partnership and I had the opportunity to be a father and to my children while growing a business. So that even though it may have taken me longer to climb the mountain, for me, when I got to the mountain, they were with me. See, because I was living life in the valley. We spend more time in the valley than we do on the mountaintop, friend. But for us to really get through the achieving more than success system, we have to realize that we're going to redefine the landscape of success. We're going to stop chasing mountaintop to mountaintop, not stop chasing mountaintops. Let me be very clear with you. But we're going to stop chasing the peak over peak, and we're going to realize that life is meant to be lived in the valley. And each of these 5 components collectively together, they begin to build out the achieving more than success system. What we're going to do over the course of the next few weeks is we're going to go through each one of these in more detail. We're going to go through and look at the shoulds that are killing you. We're going to look at the great life myth and really unpacking what that means. We're going to dive deep into identity mapping and the imposter within through the confidence method. And we're going to look at how do we really redefine the landscape of success. And when we do, what do we do now? And we will talk through our 365 formula. We're going to talk about accomplishing our goals on a daily basis and practicing the pursuit of the present. And in each of those areas, I want you to be reminded, and my challenge for you today is really begin to look at, what do you want? What do you want? I love the question that Amy asked me on the Success Magazine podcast. She said to me, every person on this podcast, Rocky, we say, how do you define success? And we always get a different answer from a different person. And that was maybe one of the most affirming statements she could have made to me, because it just doubles down on the reality that what we are doing in the ability to create the achieving more than success system is because everybody has a different definition of success, which I think is wonderful and amazing and beautiful. But without you understanding the definition of success that you have and a clear knowledge of who you are, what you believe, and what you want, you will inevitably live a life that is based on a myth, and the shoulds will kill you. Or you can follow the process and a plan that allows you and gives you the ability to really unpack what life you really want. So appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. And as always, if you are interested in learning about our next event that we have that you can be at, go to rockygarza.com/achievingmore, and you can catch up with us there and know exactly where that is, or hop over to Instagram, give us a follow, keep up with what you're doing. I so appreciate you. Let's keep going.